Commander Xelith had always been taught that the Zarnoxian Legion was the most powerful force in the galaxy. A soldier of great skill and experience, Xelith had earned the respect of his people, who had long dominated the stars with their advanced technology and ruthless tactics. They had conquered countless worlds, brought peace to many civilizations, and, in their eyes, put an end to any challenges before they even began. To them, humanity was just another insignificant species, primitive, weak, and far from a threat. When the Zarnoxian Empire decided to make contact with Earth, Xelith was chosen to lead the peacekeeping mission. This was not a mission of negotiation or understanding. It was simply a formality, an opportunity to remind Earth's inhabitants of their place in the universe. The aliens' technology far surpassed anything humanity could dream of, and they had no reason to believe that Earth's military could stand against them, let alone pose a challenge. As soon as Xelith's starship descended into Earth's atmosphere, he saw the blue planet from above, his thoughts filled with condescension. Such a primitive world, he muttered under his breath. He had heard the stories of Earth's warriors, but he wasn't impressed. He was more interested in getting this mission over with and moving on to more important matters. The humans, in his eyes, were nothing but a blip in the vastness of the galaxy. Once on Earth, Xelith was introduced to the leaders of humanity, including General Carter, one of the most respected figures in the human military. The two stood face to face, a towering alien with glowing green eyes staring down at the human leader. Xelith offered a smug smile as he looked at the Earthlings gathered around him. He couldn't help but notice how small and unimpressive they seemed, their bodies weak and unarmed compared to his own alien strength and technology. "I must say, it's quite charming," Xelith sneered. "I almost feel sorry for you all. With your outdated weapons and outdated tactics, it must be quite difficult to survive in this harsh universe." He gave a dismissive wave of his hand as though the very idea of human strength was laughable. "I doubt your defense systems would even stand a chance against the Zarnoxian Empire. No, I'd say humanity's place in the galaxy is secure, right at the bottom." The room fell silent at his words. The human leaders exchanged uneasy glances, but General Carter was unfazed. His expression hardened, and he stepped forward, standing tall and proud before the alien commander. He had heard the boasts, but he wasn't about to let his people's honor be disrespected so easily. "If you think we're so weak," General Carter said, his voice steady, "then prove it. Undergo our Special Forces training." Xelith's eyebrows shot up in surprise. A human, a mere human, was challenging him. To undergo human military training was beneath him. He had fought in the most brutal of battles across the galaxy, faced species that were far more dangerous than Earth could ever produce. And yet here was this human asking him to submit to something as trivial as military training. The idea was almost laughable. He stood there for a moment, looking down at General Carter, his lips curling into a mocking smile. "Very well," Xelith said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "If you believe your training is something worth my time, then I accept. But be warned, General, no matter how hard you push, nothing on this pathetic little planet can possibly challenge me." The humans, too stunned to respond, looked on as Xelith dismissed the challenge with the same arrogant smirk he had carried from the very beginning. For him, it was all just a game, something to pass the time until he could return to his important work in the galaxy. He believed this would be a simple exercise, something he would breeze through effortlessly. The idea that human military training could offer him any real challenge seemed absurd to him. His mind was already elsewhere, dismissing the entire ordeal. But as the words left his lips, there was a subtle shift in the air. Something was different now. Though Xelith couldn't place it, the humans around him shared a quiet, knowing look. General Carter's challenge had been more than just a test of physical prowess. It was a test of the very spirit of humanity. And though Xelith was too proud to admit it, there was something about this challenge that ignited a spark in the humans. It was no longer about proving Xelith's strength. It was about showing him just how wrong he was about humanity's abilities. As Elith turned to leave the room, he couldn't help but feel the faintest trace of unease. It was a fleeting feeling, and he quickly dismissed it. I will show them all, he thought. Their training will be nothing. I will complete it in a fraction of the time it would take any human. The next day, Xalith was taken to the human training grounds. His first challenge was a basic obstacle course. Nothing too difficult, he thought. He had survived alien battlefields and navigated the most hostile environments in the galaxy. A simple course of mud pits and high walls would be no problem. However, as he began the training, he realized that his alien technology wasn't as effective as he had expected. His cloaking device, which he had used countless times in battle, was useless in the dense forest. The gravity boots he wore, meant to enhance his speed and agility, slowed him down in ways he hadn't anticipated. The Earth soldiers around him were struggling just as much, but they were working together, helping one another climb walls and cross tricky terrain. There was something strange about their teamwork. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Their reliance on each other, their ability to push through exhaustion, to help one another when things seemed impossible, was something Xalith had never experienced with his people. And he didn't like it. This was not how things were supposed to go. He was an elite soldier of the Zarnoxian Legion, and he had been brought here to show the humans their place in the galaxy, not to struggle alongside them. As his frustration grew, so did his curiosity. Was it possible that humanity had something to offer beyond what he had expected? Was there something more to their training, something beyond their primitive technology, that made them worthy of respect? But he quickly pushed those thoughts aside. He was Xalith, and no human training, no matter how difficult, could defeat him. He would prove that the Zarnoxian Empire was still the superior force in the galaxy. But as the days wore on, and the training continued, the true test of human resilience began to take shape. It was no longer about completing an obstacle course or running through drills. It was about pushing through pain, working with others, and relying on one's instincts. The more Xalith trained, the more he realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, nor their strength. It was their refusal to give up. The training wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about defeating your own limitations. And Xalith was starting to understand that there was no easy way out. The suspense in the air built as Xalith's pride began to crack. What had begun as a laughable task was slowly transforming into something far more challenging than he had ever anticipated. This wasn't just about him proving the humans wrong. It was about something deeper, something that would change the way he saw Earth forever. And as Xalith struggled to finish his next challenge, he couldn't help but wonder, what if the humans were not as weak as I thought? Commander Xalith had always prided himself on his superiority. As an elite soldier of the Zarnoxian Legion, he had faced countless challenges and triumphed with ease. His body, enhanced by advanced alien technology, was a perfect weapon. His intellect, sharpened by centuries of training, was unparalleled. To him, Earth was nothing but a playground, an opportunity to prove just how weak and primitive humanity truly was. When General Carter challenged him to undergo human military training, Xalith had accepted with little hesitation, confident that nothing the humans could throw at him would even come close to testing his abilities. On his first day of training, Xalith walked onto the human training grounds with an air of arrogance. The soldiers around him, in their basic uniforms and simple gear, seemed unimpressive. He couldn't understand why they made such a fuss over their training. Surely, it would be nothing compared to the advanced combat drills he had experienced in the Zarnoxian Empire. But as soon as the training began, Xalith's confidence began to waver. The humans immediately put him to work, starting with the basic obstacle course. Xalith had seen similar courses before, but this one was different. The obstacles were designed to challenge not just strength, but agility, coordination, and mental toughness. As he sprinted through the course, he found that his alien technology didn't give him the advantage he had expected. His cloaking device was almost useless in the dense forest, where his movements could be easily tracked by the human soldiers. His enhanced strength, which had once been enough to crush enemies in battle, wasn't enough to help him scale walls that were much taller than he anticipated. The first task was supposed to be simple: run through a series of barriers, climb a wall, and jump over a pit. But Selith quickly realized that his body wasn't built for this kind of challenge. His boots, designed to adjust to alien terrain, felt awkward on Earth's soil. His alien physiology, so perfectly suited for space battles and high-tech environments, wasn't designed for Earth's rugged, unpredictable conditions. As he struggled through the course, Selith felt frustration building up inside him. His pride had been his greatest strength, and now it was becoming his greatest weakness. He was an elite soldier. How could he be struggling with something so simple? His arrogance had blinded him to the true nature of this challenge. It wasn't just about strength or technology. It was about something deeper. The human soldiers around him seemed to breeze through the course, even though they didn't have any of the advantages that he did. They moved with a determination that Selith couldn't understand. They stumbled, they fell, but they got back up. And when one of them stumbled, another was there to help, offering a hand or a word of encouragement. Selith couldn't help but watch them. They were weak, yes, but there was something about them that was undeniably powerful. As the training continued, Selith found himself facing even more difficult tasks. Hand-to-hand combat, something he had always excelled at, was now a test of endurance. The human soldiers didn't rely on strength alone. They used speed, agility, and clever tactics. They could anticipate his moves, counter his strikes, and force him into situations where his alien strength was less effective. They didn't fight to defeat him. They fought to survive, to push through, to keep going no matter how hard things got. It was a style of combat that Selith had never encountered before. One particular training session stood out: survival training in harsh conditions. The human soldiers were taken to a remote area, far from any form of civilization, and forced to survive for a week using only the most basic tools. Selith had no trouble starting a fire or building a shelter, but what he hadn't anticipated was the isolation. He had never spent time without his advanced technology, without the constant support of his alien comrades. But here, he was alone, forced to rely only on his skills and his wits. It was during this survival training that Selith truly began to feel the weight of his overconfidence. Every night, as he lay awake under the stars, listening to the sounds of the forest around him, he began to realize something. The humans didn't have the same advantages he did, but they had something he lacked: adaptability. They were able to take any situation and make it work for them, no matter how difficult or unfamiliar. They didn't have the luxury of technology to fall back on. They had to rely on themselves. This was when Sergeant Carter, the leader of the human squad, stepped in. Carter had been watching Selith closely, noticing the alien struggle. Though Carter's rough exterior made him seem like a no-nonsense leader, Selith soon realized there was more to him than met the eye. Carter's eyes weren't filled with the same condescension Selith had seen from other humans. No, Carter respected his soldiers, and he respected the challenge of the training. He didn't rely on brute force to lead. Instead, he led with strategy, with patience, and with an understanding of what it truly meant to survive. Carter pulled Selith aside one evening as they sat around a small campfire, the crackling of the fire the only sound in the stillness of the night. "You're struggling, aren't you?" Carter asked, his voice calm but firm. Selith, who had grown used to his superiority, didn't respond right away. Instead, he sat in silence, staring into the fire, contemplating his next words. "Your training. It's not like anything you've experienced before," Carter continued. "You've got the strength, the technology, but that's not what makes a soldier. What makes a soldier is the will to keep going when things get tough. It's about adaptability, being able to change when the world around you changes. That's what we have. That's what makes us strong." Xylith turned to look at Carter, his mind racing. Adaptability. It was a concept that had never fully clicked with him before. His people had always relied on their technology, their power, their superiority to dominate. But here, on this strange planet, humans were surviving in ways that didn't rely on strength or technology. They were surviving through determination, through their ability to adapt to any situation. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Xylith felt doubt. Could it be that the humans had something he couldn't easily defeat? He had always assumed that raw power would win every battle, but now he wasn't so sure. Carter's words hung in the air, and Xylith knew he was facing the most difficult challenge of all, learning to be adaptable. His pride, his strength, and his technology would only take him so far. The real test would be whether he could change his mindset and embrace the one thing his species had never truly understood, the human ability to persevere no matter the odds. But as the days passed, Xylith found himself becoming more and more frustrated. He wasn't used to this kind of training. He wasn't used to feeling so vulnerable. He had always relied on his alien powers to make him superior to everyone else. But here, in the wilderness of Earth, those powers didn't guarantee success. The humans were teaching him something far more valuable than any technology, the true meaning of resilience. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when Xylith wanted to give up. But as he pushed himself harder, as he struggled to keep up with the human soldiers, he began to realize that the greatest strength didn't come from brute force. It came from the will to keep fighting, no matter how difficult things became. The suspense continued to build as Xylith struggled to come to terms with this new reality. Would he finally admit that humanity had something to teach him? Or would his arrogance continue to cloud his judgment? One thing was certain. Xylith's view of humanity was about to change forever. The sun had barely risen over the training grounds when the call came through. It was time for the live combat drill. The humans, as always, had something in mind that would push Xylith beyond his limits. Until now, the training had been tough, but it had all been manageable. Tests of strength, agility, and endurance. But this was different. This was real. This was the first time Xylith would face the full force of human strategy in a combat scenario, and he had no idea what to expect. Xylith, with his alien armor and weapons, stood at the edge of the battlefield, looking over the terrain. His weapon, a sleek, high-tech blaster designed for maximum precision, hummed with power. The Zarnoxian technology at his disposal was far superior to anything humanity could produce. His armor was made of a rare, lightweight material that could withstand even the most powerful of projectiles, and his energy shields were designed to absorb immense amounts of damage. To Xylith, this was an easy win. He had the technology. He had the firepower. And he was ready to show the humans just how helpless they truly were. As the drill began, the human soldiers quickly scattered, disappearing into the dense trees and underbrush. Xylith's eyes scanned the area, but the humans were already out of sight. He knew they had been trained for this, using the terrain to their advantage, blending into the environment. But Xylith was confident in his ability to detect them. He activated his enhanced vision, which allowed him to track heat signatures and movements from miles away. Surely, this would be an easy task. But as he advanced, something felt off. The humans weren't where he expected them to be. They were everywhere. Suddenly, a group of soldiers emerged from the shadows, opening fire on him. Xylith quickly raised his energy shield, the plasma rounds bouncing off with a loud crack, but the humans were already moving. They didn't stop to engage him directly. They just kept moving, weaving through the trees and firing from different angles. Xylith attempted to return fire, but every time he fired, the humans had already moved. They didn't stay in one place long enough to be hit. He could feel the frustration building inside him. His weapon was powerful. His training was unmatched, and yet the humans seemed to know something he didn't. Their tactics were unpredictable. No one had ever fought like this before. They didn't rely on brute force or flashy technology. They used their surroundings, the environment itself, to confuse and disorient him. Scylla switched to his cloaking device, hoping to gain the upper hand. He became invisible, his presence concealed by advanced alien tech. He moved silently through the forest, confident that he could ambush the humans before they even knew he was there. But as he stalked through the woods, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The silence was oppressive, and every crackling leaf under his foot felt like a loud echo in the stillness. Then it happened. Without warning, a sudden explosion tore through the ground beneath him, knocking Scylla off his feet. His cloaking device malfunctioned, flickering in and out as he struggled to regain his balance. The humans had set a trap. They had anticipated his every move. Scylla quickly scrambled to his feet, firing his weapon in the direction of the explosion. But before he could react, a group of human soldiers burst from the brush, charging directly at him. They were quick, agile, and organized. This wasn't the chaos he had expected. They weren't just fighting blindly. They had a plan. They knew exactly what they were doing. It was like they had anticipated every one of his actions before he even made them. The combat became a blur of movement. Scylla's sleek, high-tech weapons clashed against the raw, determined tactics of the human soldiers. They fought in close quarters, using knives and handheld weapons to disarm him, to knock him off balance. Scylla tried to fight back with his superior strength and technology, but for every one of his moves, the humans had already countered with an unexpected tactic. Scylla was beginning to realize that there was something about these humans he had underestimated. It wasn't their strength, their technology, or their sheer firepower. It was their unpredictability. They didn't fight according to the rules. They didn't rely on their technology alone. They fought with their minds, with their instincts, and with an incredible adaptability that Scylla couldn't match. The battle raged on. Scylla's armor took damage from the constant barrage of human attacks. His energy shield flickered, failing to fully protect him as the humans relentlessly pushed forward. Every time he thought he had the upper hand, another surprise attack would throw him off balance. His arrogance, his belief in his superior technology, was quickly fading. He was no longer in control. The humans were in control. As the battle continued, Scylla could feel himself becoming more and more frustrated. He had never been so disoriented in a combat situation before. He had always relied on his alien tech, his advanced training, to give him an edge over his enemies. But here, on Earth, his tech seemed to be a double-edged sword. It was powerful, yes, but it wasn't enough to deal with the human tactics. Every time he tried to fight back, the humans seemed to be one step ahead of him. And then, in the midst of the chaos, something happened that shook him to his core. Bonner, one of Scylla's few remaining allies, was caught in a brutal ambush. A group of human soldiers, hidden in the trees, had launched a surprise attack, and Bonner was struck down before Scylla could react. The moment he saw Bonner fall, something inside Scylla shifted. His mind went numb. For the first time, he realized the true cost of battle. It wasn't just about defeating your enemies. It was about the people who fought beside you, who trusted you, who relied on you. Bonner's body hit the ground with a sickening thud, and Scylla felt a deep pang of guilt wash over him. His friend, his ally, was gone, and it was his fault. He had underestimated the humans. He had mocked them, and now one of his own was dead because of his arrogance. Scylla's anger flared, but so did a sense of dread. He had become part of the very battle he had once thought was beneath him. He had underestimated humanity, and now it was costing him. Scylla's mind raced as the reality of Bonner's death began to settle in. He had always fought for victory, for conquest. But now he realized that the true value of a soldier was not just in their ability to win. It was in their ability to learn from their mistakes, to adapt, and to survive. He had seen the humans fight with a determination he had never witnessed before. They didn't just fight to win. They fought to protect their own. And that, more than any weapon or piece of technology, was what made them strong. In the chaos of the battle, Silith took a moment to reflect. His arrogance, his belief that his technology could solve everything, had led him to this moment. Bonner's death had shattered his view of the humans, and now Silith was forced to confront a harsh truth. The humans were not weak. In fact, they might just be stronger than he had ever imagined. The drill ended soon after, with the humans retreating into the safety of their base. Silith was left standing in the field, staring at the spot where Bonner had fallen. His weapon was still in his hand, but it felt heavy now. The thrill of the fight, the excitement of the challenge, had faded. All that was left was a deep sense of loss and regret. Silith had come to Earth expecting to prove his superiority. Instead, he had faced a reality check that he couldn't ignore. The humans, with all their flaws and limitations, had shown him a strength he had never understood before. And now, as he stood amidst the wreckage of the battle, he had to decide. Would he continue to fight with arrogance, or would he learn from the humans and truly understand what it meant to be strong? The suspense hung in the air as Silith stood in the aftermath, his mind filled with questions. The real test had only just begun. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows over the battlefield as Silith prepared for the final training exercise. This was the one he had been dreading. The exercise was designed to simulate a real alien invasion, and for the first time, Silith would face an enemy that didn't tire, didn't feel fear, and didn't hesitate. The AI-controlled combat robots. The robots, created by the humans, were designed with advanced weaponry and artificial intelligence that allowed them to adapt and respond to any situation. These machines were not just programmed to attack. They were programmed to learn, think, and fight with strategic precision. To an outsider, it seemed impossible for human soldiers to stand a chance against such technologically superior enemies. But Silith had learned by now that humans were never to be underestimated. Standing on the edge of the battlefield, Silith observed the massive robots, their glowing red eyes scanning the terrain, their heavy metallic limbs moving with terrifying precision. They were intimidating, to say the least, but Silith had no doubt that he, with his superior alien technology, could easily wipe them out. But as the exercise began, he quickly realized that this wouldn't be like the other drills. The first wave of robots advanced, their metallic bodies reflecting the sunlight in sharp, cold glints. The human soldiers opened fire, their weapons lighting up the dark morning sky. But the robots didn't flinch. They took the hits and returned fire, their guns blazing in perfect synchronization. Silith quickly engaged with his own weapon, firing powerful energy blasts at the advancing machines. But for every robot he destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The battle quickly turned into chaos. What struck Silith immediately was the sight of the human soldiers. They were scattered across the battlefield, moving in small groups, communicating, and cooperating in a way he had never seen before. Silith was used to fighting solo, relying on his alien tech and strength. But the humans were working together, flanking the robots, providing cover fire, and coordinating their attacks in a way that was nothing short of impressive. Silith watched in awe as Sergeant Carter, his training partner, barked orders to the troops, directing them with precision and confidence. Carter wasn't just a leader by rank. He was a natural leader. He saw the battlefield as a living thing, adjusting his tactics as the situation evolved. Silith had once scoffed at the idea of human teamwork, thinking it was nothing more than a primitive strategy. But now, he was forced to admit that the humans' ability to cooperate in the heat of battle was far beyond what he had ever expected. The battle intensified, with the AI-controlled robots pushing forward relentlessly. The human soldiers fought with everything they had, but the robots were relentless. Their weapons were far more advanced than any human technology, and their AI allowed them to adapt and counter human tactics with frightening efficiency. The humans were outmatched, outgunned, and yet they refused to give up. Silith was no longer fighting for his own survival. Now, he was fighting for the survival of his human comrades. As the robots advanced, Silith found himself facing an impossible choice: rely on his alien technology, which had already begun to fail him in this unpredictable environment, or put his trust in the humans, who had shown him time and time again that their strength wasn't in their tech, but in their spirit. The tension on the battlefield was palpable. Explosions rocked the ground, sending up clouds of dust and debris. The sky above was filled with the sounds of orbital bombardments from the training drones, their weapons raining down fire from above. Selith's heart raced as he engaged in fierce firefights, his weapons malfunctioning as the robots pushed forward. Each step the humans took brought them closer to the breaking point. As the battle raged on, Selith's weapon, a powerful alien blaster, began to falter. The energy cells had drained too quickly, and the weapon malfunctioned, rendering it useless in the middle of the fight. He cursed under his breath. He had always relied on his advanced technology to give him the edge in battle. But now, standing on the battlefield with his weapon useless, he was exposed, vulnerable. His alien strength was still unmatched, but it wasn't enough against the sheer numbers and adaptability of the robots. Selith turned to Sergeant Carter, who was right beside him, directing the human soldiers with calm determination. Carter didn't hesitate. He tossed Selith a spare rifle, one of the humans' standard-issue weapons. "Here," Carter said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "You'll need this. Trust the humans for once." Selith hesitated, staring at the rifle in his hands. It felt small and insignificant compared to his powerful alien weapons. But as he looked into Carter's eyes, something shifted. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Selith realized that the humans' true strength wasn't in their weapons or technology. It was in their ability to keep fighting, to keep going, no matter the odds. Taking a deep breath, Selith accepted the rifle. It wasn't the weapon that would win the battle, he realized. It was the strategy, the teamwork, and the human will to survive. He fired the rifle, working alongside Carter and the others, moving as one unit, coordinating their efforts to take down the robots. The battle continued, but now Selith was no longer fighting alone. He was part of something bigger. He could see it in the eyes of the soldiers around him. The determination, the unity, the belief that they could win. The robots were relentless, but so were the humans. As Selith fought alongside them, he felt a sense of camaraderie he had never experienced before. For the first time, he wasn't just a soldier. He was part of a team. The robots, despite their superior firepower and AI, began to falter. The humans' tactics were working. They used their knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver the machines, setting up ambushes, creating distractions, and drawing the robots into traps. Selith was amazed at how effectively the humans used their environment to their advantage. It wasn't just their bravery or their determination. It was their ingenuity. The humans had figured out how to fight not just with force, but with their minds. But the battle was far from over. As Selith moved through the battlefield, he saw his comrades fall one by one. Each death was a blow to his resolve, but it also strengthened his determination to keep going. For every human who fell, another took their place. They didn't stop fighting. They didn't give up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the AI-controlled robots fell. The battlefield was silent except for the sounds of the wounded and the distant cries of victory. Selith stood amidst the wreckage, panting heavily, his body covered in dirt and blood. He had survived. The humans had survived. But more importantly, he had learned something. Something that would change the way he viewed humanity forever. Humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were capable of far more than anyone had ever given them credit for. And in this moment, standing alongside Sergeant Carter and the other soldiers, Selith knew that he had finally come to understand the true meaning of strength. It wasn't in technology or alien power. It was in the will to fight, to adapt, and to never give up, no matter the odds. As the smoke cleared and the sun began to rise higher in the sky, Selith turned to Carter. "I was wrong," he said, his voice heavy with realization. "Humans are not weak. They are the strongest beings I've ever encountered." Carter smiled, his eyes tired but proud. "Welcome to Earth, Xelith," he said simply. Xelith nodded, a sense of respect and admiration for the humans welling up inside him. The battle was over, but for Xelith, the true test had just begun. The air was thick with smoke and dust. The battlefield, once a training ground, now resembled the aftermath of a real war. Explosions rang out in the distance, and the sharp crackle of energy weapons filled the air. Xelith, despite all the intense training he had endured, couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease. This wasn't just another drill. This was the final test. The simulated alien invasion was the culmination of everything he had learned during his time with the humans. It was the moment that would define him. Would he choose the cold, calculating ways of his people, the Zarnoxians, or would he embrace the human way of fighting, with all its chaos, unpredictability, and above all, teamwork? Xelith stood on the edge of the battlefield, surveying the area. His Zarnoxian instincts told him to take control, to lead the charge, to rely on his superior strength and advanced technology. After all, that's how things were done in his world. But the humans had shown him a different way. They'd fought not just with weapons, but with their hearts, with their bonds to one another. The thought of abandoning them now made his stomach twist. He had learned too much about humanity, about their spirit, their strength to walk away. And yet the pull of his past, the weight of his Zarnoxian pride, was still strong. Sergeant Carter, the man who had taught him so much about what it meant to be human, had been at his side throughout it all. But now, Carter was in trouble. Xelith could see it from a distance. Carter had been cornered by a group of enemy combatants. He was injured, struggling to keep himself upright, his rifle clutched in his hand despite the obvious pain he was in. It was a sight that would have broken Xelith's heart had he allowed himself to feel it. But he couldn't. Not now. Not when the battle was still raging around them. Xelith raced toward Carter, pushing through the chaos of the battlefield, ignoring the energy blasts and the screams of soldiers around him. When he reached Carter, the sight that greeted him was worse than he had imagined. The sergeant was kneeling, blood dripping from his side, his face pale. He managed a weak smile when he saw Xelith approach. "Carter," Xelith said urgently, his voice tight with emotion, "we need to get you out of here." Carter shook his head weakly. "No, there's no time for that. I'm not going to make it." He coughed, blood staining his lips. "But you have to listen to me, Xelith. It's not about the weapons. It's about what you're willing to fight for." Xelith froze at Carter's words. The simplicity of the statement, the weight of it, hit him harder than anything he had ever felt before. Carter wasn't talking about the battle they were in. He wasn't talking about winning or losing. He was talking about something much deeper, something that transcended the battlefield. It was about the reason they were fighting, about what they were protecting, and why they were willing to risk everything. It was about the humanity Carter had shown him all along. Xelith had spent his entire life thinking that strength was measured by the power of one's weapon, the superiority of one's technology. But Carter's words made him realize that strength wasn't just about firepower. It was about the heart, the will to protect those you cared about, and the willingness to fight for something greater than yourself. Carter had been willing to give his life to protect his fellow soldiers, to protect the humans who had taken him in. That, more than anything, was what made humans truly strong. "Carter, no," Xelith whispered, his voice breaking. He knelt beside the injured soldier, feeling an overwhelming sense of helplessness. He had been trained to fight, to lead, to conquer. But this moment was different. This was a test of everything he had learned from the humans. He had to make a choice, and it was a choice that would define him forever. The battle raged on around them, but Xelith's mind was elsewhere. He thought back to everything he had experienced with the humans, his time with Carter, his training with the soldiers, the lessons about teamwork, perseverance, and resilience. He thought about how they had shown him that strength wasn't just about power, but about the bonds you formed, the people you fought for, and the reasons you kept going, no matter how impossible things seemed. Seelith's heart pounded in his chest as the weight of Carter's words sank in. It wasn't just about defeating the enemy. It was about defending Earth, about protecting the humans who had accepted him despite his initial arrogance. It was about fighting for a cause greater than himself, for a future that he now knew was worth protecting. He couldn't walk away from this. He couldn't turn his back on the people who had shown him what true strength was. Carter's death would not be in vain. He would carry his message with him, and he would fight for the humans, for Earth. With a final glance at Carter, Seelith stood up, determination setting in his eyes. "I won't leave. I won't let you down." Seelith rejoined the fight, his mind now clear. The human soldiers were still struggling against the alien forces, but they weren't alone anymore. Seelith fought alongside them, his alien technology no longer his crutch. He used it when necessary, but he relied on the tactics and strategies that the humans had taught him. He moved with precision, communicating with the soldiers around him, working as a team. The battle was far from over, but now, Seelith knew what he had to do. The chaos of the battle raged on, but there was a shift. The humans, once on the back foot, were beginning to push back. Seelith's presence, his newfound understanding of what it meant to fight as a team, had made all the difference. He wasn't just a soldier fighting for survival anymore. He was part of something bigger, something worth protecting. And as the battle wore on, the humans began to gain ground. But the battle wasn't just about defeating the alien invaders. It was about something more. It was about showing the humans that Seelith had finally understood what made them so powerful. It was about proving that he had learned the true meaning of strength, that it wasn't in the weapons you carried, but in the courage to fight for what you believed in, the willingness to risk everything for the people you cared about. As the last of the alien forces were driven back, Seelith stood at the edge of the battlefield, watching the humans celebrate their victory. The battle was over, but Seelith knew that this moment had changed him forever. He had come to Earth expecting to prove that his kind was superior, that the Zarnoxians were the dominant species in the galaxy. But now, he understood that true strength came from within. It came from the heart, from the bonds you formed with others, and from the willingness to fight for something bigger than yourself. Seelith looked down at the rifle in his hands, then up at the horizon. Carter's words echoed in his mind. "It's not about the weapons. It's about what you're willing to fight for." And for the first time, Seelith understood. He wasn't just fighting for Earth. He was fighting for humanity, for the people who had shown him what it truly meant to be strong. As the sun set behind him, Seelith knew that his journey was far from over. But he was no longer the same soldier who had arrived on Earth months ago. He had learned the most important lesson of all. And as he looked to the future, he knew that he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, alongside the humans who had earned his respect and his loyalty. The battle was reaching its boiling point. The sky above Earth was a chaotic mix of energy beams, explosions, and the roar of engines as human forces clashed against the overwhelming force of alien invaders. Seelith, now fully integrated into the human ranks, stood at the forefront, his alien weapons at the ready, but his mind focused on something deeper. He wasn't just fighting with technology anymore. This fight wasn't about who had the bigger guns or the stronger army. It was about the human spirit, the resilience, the teamwork, and the unwavering will to protect Earth, no matter what the cost. The aliens, led by their cold, calculating artificial intelligence-controlled forces, had underestimated humanity. They had thought that advanced technology and superior firepower would be enough to crush the humans. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that they had made a grave mistake. Earth's forces were fighting with something far more powerful than technology. They were fighting with heart, with unity, and with the unbreakable determination that only humans seemed to possess. Seelith, alongside his human comrades, charged into the fray, the chaos of battle swirling around him. The sleek alien weapons he wielded seemed insignificant compared to the soldiers around him, who moved with precision, using tactics that Selith had once scoffed at. The humans were everywhere, working together like a well-oiled machine, coordinating ambushes, setting traps, and countering every move the AI-controlled invaders made. For the first time, Selith realized that the humans had something he had never understood before, a deep sense of unity, a will to fight for each other that transcended the battlefield. In the heat of the final showdown, Selith found himself in the thick of the action. His Zarnoxian instincts kicked in as he fired energy blasts at the advancing enemy forces, but he quickly realized that his alien technology alone wasn't enough. He had to think on his feet, adapt to the unpredictable nature of human tactics, and work alongside the soldiers who had become his brothers and sisters in arms. The human soldiers, despite their lack of advanced technology, moved with a fluidity that Selith couldn't help but admire. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for each other and for the future of Earth. The battle was intense. Explosions shook the ground as the AI-controlled invaders began to retreat, their once imposing forces now scattered and broken. The human forces pressed forward, relentless in their pursuit of victory. The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, were now on the defensive, unable to match the sheer willpower of the humans. Selith fought with everything he had, not just for his survival, but for the survival of the planet that had taught him the true meaning of strength. As the last of the alien forces were driven back, Selith stood at the edge of the battlefield, watching the humans celebrate their victory. The battle was over, but Selith knew that this moment had changed him forever. He had come to Earth expecting to prove that his kind was superior, that the Zarnoxians were the dominant species in the galaxy. But now, he understood that true strength came from within. It came from the heart, from the bonds you formed with others, and from the willingness to fight for something bigger than yourself. Selith looked down at the rifle in his hands, then up at the horizon. Carter's words echoed in his mind. It's not about the weapons. It's about what you're willing to fight for. And for the first time, Selith understood. He wasn't just fighting for Earth. He was fighting for humanity, for the people who had shown him what it truly meant to be strong. As the sun set behind him, Selith knew that his journey was far from over, but he was no longer the same soldier who had arrived on Earth months ago. He had learned the most important lesson of all, and as he looked to the future, he knew that he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, alongside the humans who had earned his respect and his loyalty. The battle was reaching its boiling point. The sky above Earth was a chaotic mix of energy beams, explosions, and the roar of engines as human forces clashed against the overwhelming force of alien invaders. Selith, now fully integrated into the human ranks, stood at the forefront, his alien weapons at the ready, but his mind focused on something deeper. He wasn't just fighting with technology anymore. This fight wasn't about who had the bigger guns or the stronger army. It was about the human spirit, the resilience, the teamwork, and the unwavering will to protect Earth, no matter what the cost. The aliens, led by their cold, calculating artificial intelligence-controlled forces, had underestimated humanity. They had thought that advanced technology and superior firepower would be enough to crush the humans. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that they had made a grave mistake. Earth's forces were fighting with something far more powerful than technology. They were fighting with heart, with unity, and with the unbreakable determination that only humans seemed to possess. Selith, alongside his human comrades, charged into the fray, the chaos of battle swirling around him. The sleek alien weapons he wielded seemed insignificant compared to the soldiers around him, who moved with precision, using tactics that Selith had once scoffed at. The humans were everywhere, working together like a well-oiled machine, coordinating ambushes, setting traps, and countering every move the AI-controlled invaders made. For the first time, Selith realized that the humans had something he had never understood before, a deep sense of unity, a will to fight for each other that transcended the battlefield. In the heat of the final showdown, Selith found himself in the thick of the action. His Zarnoxian instincts kicked in as he fired energy blasts at the advancing enemy forces, but he quickly realized that his alien technology alone wasn't enough. He had to think on his feet, adapt to the unpredictable nature of human tactics, and work alongside the soldiers who had become his brothers and sisters in arms. The human soldiers, despite their lack of advanced technology, moved with a fluidity that Salith couldn't help but admire. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for each other and for the future of Earth. The battle was intense. Explosions shook the ground as the eye-controlled invaders began to retreat, their once imposing forces now scattered and broken. The human forces pressed forward, relentless in their pursuit of victory. The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, were now on the defensive, unable to match the sheer willpower of the humans. Salith fought with everything he had, not just for his survival, but for the survival of the planet that had taught him the true meaning of strength.